Welcome to the Artist of Data Science Happy Hour. It is Friday, July 16th, 2021. Super excited to have all of you guys here. What's up to Eric, Russell, Vin, Albert in the house, man? Super excited to have all you guys here. Shout out to everybody tuning in live on LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube. If you guys got questions, go ahead and drop them right there in the chat and we will get to you. Hopefully you got an opportunity to tune into the episode I released today. Release an episode with the one and only James Altucher. This is one that I was super pumped for, super excited. It's been sitting in the backlog for literally 6 months. I recorded that episode 6 months ago. So I've just been itching to get it out and release it. And it's finally out there. Hopefully you guys got a chance to tune in. I really enjoyed it. James Altucher is a huge impact on me, huge influence on me. I definitely totally respect that guy. So let's go ahead and get it going, man. If you guys got questions, let me know right there in the chat. I think Vin has a question. All right. Let's go to Vin's question. Go for it.
Yeah, I got a really easy question. So building out I've got a language model. It's already built in English. And there are other language corpus that are corpuses that I'm going to extend it out to. Is there anybody got any cool research papers you can drop in the chat for me to take a look at to preserve some of the structure of the original model? And it's 100% custom. I could obviously retrain it using the corpus from a different language, but are there any cool research papers I should be looking at or anything I can take a look at that's maybe a shortcut approach? Because obviously I don't have as much data in every other language. So the basics of what I need to do from one language to another is the same. I mean, it's almost like the model just needs to understand how to translate. So if anybody's got any cool research that I can read or take a look at, or any, aside from the stuff that's out there from Hugging Face and Google and everything else, but if anybody has anything, I would really appreciate it. Looking for maybe a creative approach.
That was going to be my first suggestion, was some of the stuff by Hugging Face and Google. Yeah, if anybody got any suggestions, go ahead and let us know. Drop it in the chat or just unmute yourself and let us know. I'd be interested to learn about that too. I just started learning more and more about NLP just over the last couple of weeks. It's super fascinating, man. Really, really enjoy that space, and that's something that I'm trying to drill down into and get really good at and knowledgeable about. But man, what a huge field it is. So yeah, if anybody has any insider information for Vin, go ahead and drop it right there in the chat. I'll see what I can come up with. I'll shoot you a message over the weekend when I do some research. But yeah, man, super excited to have all you guys here. I guess let's kick it off with a question then, huh? Let's get this conversation warmed up. So I was thinking about how to kick this off. It's been a long week for me, dude. I've done tons of interviews this week. It's crazy. But I'm wondering, what is your favorite question to ask in an interview? So if you are somebody who's been in the position of a hiring manager, what's your favorite question to ask candidates when they're in an interview, and why is that your favorite question to ask? What is it that you're hoping to get from someone by asking that question? On the flip side, if you have not been in a hiring manager type of position, what is your favorite question to ask the interviewer? So, at the end of the interview, there's typically that period of, oh, do you have any questions for us? What's your favorite question to ask in that situation? Definitely want to go ahead and hear all of you guys' responses. Let's kick it off with Russell, then go to Vin, and then we'll see if anybody else has any insight. Definitely would love to hear from Albert and Eric and everybody else. I'll restate the question for you guys later, but essentially it's this: what's your favorite question to ask a candidate in an interview? Why is that your favorite question? What is it that you're hoping to get out of the candidate? On the flip side, if you haven't been like a hiring manager in a hiring manager type of position, what's your favorite question to ask during the do you have any questions for us type of phase of the interview? Russell, go for it.
Evening all. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So one of the questions I like to ask most when hiring is talking to the candidate and say, you obviously know about the company, you like the company, hence you're here. What's one thing that the company could do to make it that you couldn't turn down this position? What's one field they could be in, what's one action they could do, and anything that you're not aware of already that they could add to their repertoire that would make it almost impossible for you to turn down the position, and get some feedback from them. And I think in two ways that allows you to understand how much they understand about the company so far, but it also brings in an external perspective that you may not have considered before that can give you some additional insight for progression of the organization.
I like that. That's a good question to ask. And I like the rationale behind asking that. Vin, what about you? What's your favorite question to ask a candidate when they're coming into the interview?
Mine's kind of generic, but this one's been a go-to for years for me. And it's, tell me about a project that you've completed end to end, just start to finish. And it works, from the junior level for somebody who's just graduated from college, they can talk about an independent project all the way out to very, very senior. You can talk about pieces of what you did. Obviously, NDAs kind of stop you from going all the way into any sort of proprietary work, but you can talk about some of the accomplishments, some of the achievements, and it's such an open-ended question that allows for a discussion. I can stop them and ask them questions about a methodology that they used. Why'd you do this? How would you improve? And it becomes conversational. And the whole interview then is talking about stuff they know, not me asking questions that maybe they know, maybe they don't know the answer, maybe they're having a rough day. I mean, nobody forgets a great project that they worked on. And so it's one of those that it's easy. It sets the tone for an interview, and I get a whole lot of really good responses, and I get a good feel for the candidate.
Yeah, honestly, that's also my favorite question to ask too, something along the lines of talk to me about your favorite project. I've had that question asked to me in a number of different ways. Like I've had somebody ask me the same thing, like what's the most interesting end-to-end project you've done? I had somebody ask me what's the most challenging, and just what's your favorite project. I think in any of those situations, no matter what, like if you're preparing for an interview, just have one project you could talk about it at great length, in great depth, in great detail, from any angle. You could defend any question that comes. You could talk about it inside out, upside down, wherever. Just always have that one story ready for you. I made the mistake of answering a question, tell me about the most challenging project you had. And I actually did talk about the most challenging one that failed. In hindsight, I was like, man, I probably should have just used my canned response that I use for tell me about your favorite project type of question. But yeah, shout out to everybody that just joined. Vivian, good to see you again. Albert got his camera on. Eric Spencer, what's up, everybody? So question is, what's your favorite question to ask in an interview? If you're a hiring manager, tell us about that. If you are in the interview process, talk to us about your favorite question to ask the interviewers. Eric, let's hear from you.
Okay, so I kind of have like two. The first is just a short one, and that was at a previous role, I was working in like sales and marketing stuff, but because it was a small company, I was kind of also the de facto tech support guy. And and I got asked all sorts of like goofy questions. Or one time somebody had a little Bluetooth keyboard, and they were like, I cannot get this Bluetooth keyboard to connect to my computer. Can you help me? And so I like went and I was fiddling with it for a while. And then I realized it was not a Bluetooth keyboard. It was a USB keyboard, and the USB thing was gone. And so it was like, I'm going to remember this for later. And so when a few months later, when we decided to hire a tech support person, I brought the keyboard in as well as a few other things, because it's like, you don't know what kind of tech, like what job are you getting into? Like complex tech support or like this kind of tech support or what? So I just gave her the keyboard and I said, can you connect this to your laptop for me? And just watch to see how she did. And she did fine. She wasn't able to do it either. I would have been really surprised if she was. But just to like follow that process and see what that person did, and just kind of get inside their head, right? Which actually kind of goes along with my favorite question, and that is, I just asked, what do you like to do at work? Because I want to know the kinds of things you're into. Like if somebody asked me what I like to do, I would tell them something like, I like to do like process improvement stuff and process automation. Like I get super jazzed about making things like streamlined and flow really well. And I hate doing anything that has to do with like tracking expenses for my, like I would be a terrible accountant, that kind of thing. And so it just like helps me get inside their head, and they can kind of get inside the way that I approach processes, and same for me to them. So that's what I like to do. What do you like to do?
I like that question. That's a great question to end on, right? Like my variation of that question, when it's my turn to ask questions in an interview, I always try to squeeze in, what do you love most about working here? It's very kind of analogous to what do you like about the work you do here. Um, there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is just that it's like the nobody's gonna feel upset about talking about things they love, right? So they're gonna leave the interview in an upbeat, positive kind of tone. They're gonna associate that mood and feeling with you. Then there's the recency effect. So even if like the beginning half of your interview kind of was shaky, all they're really gonna remember and take away is that at the end you made them feel good because you asked what they love. So that's a great.
Yeah, and like on the interviewer side, it's also nice because like sometimes you're talking to somebody and so like the last person that I was interviewing, I was like the fourth person that they were talking to, right? And so they're either tired or they've been like they might feel intimidated or whatever, And then I walk in, I'm not super intimidating. And so it's like I just want like to ask you a question to like get to know you and you can loosen up and relax and then hopefully I get to see the best self that you have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely love that, man. Vivian, what about you? What is your favorite question to ask in an interview? What, if you're the hiring manager, what's the question you like to ask candidates and why? But if you're on the flip side, if you're in an interview and you got that round of, asking questions, what's your go-to and why?
Well, I thought of, I guess, asking as an interviewer, I always like to ask kind of what are the company's greatest challenges and what are like your team's greatest challenges? And I know that's kind of the opposite of the question that you just said of like putting people in a good mood because they're talking about what they love. But like, I feel like the challenges question though is a great way to like find any red flags, and like get a better sense of like the culture and what like if you get to ask it of like the hiring manager, you can get a sense of kind of like how they manage things better and stuff. And also it opens up an opportunity for you like as the person in a place of hiring to also like have something to bring in of like, oh, I can solve that for you, kind of thing, and brag about yourself. But so I feel like it's a great question because it can put you in a great position to set yourself up as a good candidate and also be really telling as well as like figuring out what the culture of this place is like, kind of thing. So that's one of my favorites.
I like that. It's a good approach as well. Albert, what's going on, man? Good to see you here. So you're in the car office, I see.
Yeah, good to be seen.
Yeah, man.
This is
what's your
different than the
favorite
usual. This is not the mobile analytics unit. This is
mobile analytics
this is my wife's pilot. So yeah, I'm definitely on the other side from most of you guys. But the one that I kind of go to a lot and in kind of me fashion, I have to almost make it a little awkward. I don't have a certain way of asking it. I kind of have to feel the person out, but it's along the lines of what do you love about this company? But usually if I feel like they're giving me kind of a line of shit, then I'll kind of reframe it and just say, hey, you clearly, you're in a managerial or directorial position here. You've got some mobility and freedom. I'm sure you've had offers to go work other places. Why do you work here? Like, why do you stay? And then usually they'll kind of cut the crap, and if you get a little pointed and weird about it, then you'll kind of get below the surface layer, and then they say, well, it's my team is amazing, or the organizational or the potential advancement, or then they'll start getting down to brass tacks and what really makes them keen to come into work every day. And if they keep it up and and keep kind of giving you the fluff, then it's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I like these, like the last few questions have been heavy on trying to just assess the culture of the company, make sure it's the right place for you. So I like these types of questions as well. Shout out to everybody that just joined. What up, Matt Blazo? What's up, Greg? What's up, Dylan? So happy to see you guys here. Asha, happy to see you here on a Friday. Man, usually you're here on Sundays, man. Good to see you. Dylan, man, let's hear from you. What's your favorite question to ask in an interview? Greg, I'm gonna come to you next. So let me know if you got the question down. If somebody could type it out for Greg in the chat, that'd be great. By the way, if anybody else has questions, we're taking them. Let me know in the chat. Let me know on the comments on LinkedIn, on YouTube, wherever you're watching this. Um, there's billions of you out there watching this, so you should have a question. Go for it, Dylan.
Yeah, for sure. I actually like to ask about data engineering. So I've been working as a data analyst for quite a few years now. And the one thing that I always get frustrated with is joining a role where I'm expected to provide business value. And then, first 6 months, you're just trying to get a couple of fields into SQL. So really just kind of digging in there. And one way to kind of dig in further is just like asking the maturity of the team and finding out how big that team is. If they say they've got 10 analysts and like one data engineer, then I get nervous and I run away. So that's really kind of my favorite one to ask there. And I'm not usually on the other side of the table yet. So I'll leave that for some of the more experienced people.
Oh man, that's honestly, because I applied for a lot of roles that are like, they tend to just be the first data scientist that they're hiring. And that's one of the first questions I ask is, do you have plans to hire a data engineer, or do you have any data engineering capability on deck already? Because we hope you don't expect one person to do everything. That is a company I would run the other direction from. Let's hear from Greg, then Matt, and then Matt Blaza, that is the only Matt. And if you guys have questions, go ahead, let me know. Got a couple questions rolling in through LinkedIn. Christine Seagrave, I'll get to your question in a second. But Greg, let's hear from you.
Yeah, how's it going, guys? So to make sure I got the question right, it's what are the questions to ask during an interview as an interviewee? Is that correct?
Yeah. So I mean, either or, like, you're probably on the hiring manager type of thing. So if you got like a candidate coming in, you're assessing, their qualifications, whatever, you're just trying to get a feel of the candidate. What's your favorite question to ask a candidate, and why? And if you want to share on the flip side, like if you're in an interview, what's your favorite question to ask, like the interviewers?
Yeah, sure. If I'll start with the flip side. So if I'm being interviewed, I like to ask a few questions. One for sure is about the current position. Sometimes a lot of hirers like to hide the fact that they need somebody to kill fires versus hiring somebody to transform their organization. So meaning the person who's going to join will be focusing on projects that will really transform for the long term, et cetera, versus somebody just left. Now there's a vacancy. There's a lot of fires to kill. They just secretly want to hire someone who's going to continue to do manual work, checking things and stuff like that. So I like to ask certain questions about the position, about the 70% of the time, what are the things that I will be focusing on, what kind of projects and things like that, and have a feel for how transformative these projects are related to the position and the department I'm trying to join. Then another part of that too, I like to ask about risk, and I think Russell, you put a question that's similar to that in the conversation. So when there's a situation where there were a mistake that was made that was costly, what were the key learnings, and how was it? How the learning came about, who was responsible, what happened to the person who made the mistake. How was the person coached and things like that? So those are the questions that I like to ask around those errors. And then the third one is about taking risk. I like to analyze how risky a hire is about bringing new innovation. So when you're bringing somebody in, you want that person to bring that outside set of eyes, bringing new ideas, fresh ideas, and things like that. So are they open to someone coming in and challenging the status quo and coming up with things that they never thought about? How is that received? How is the culture around innovation and things like that? So those are the questions that I like to focus on. Now, if I'm the hirer, let me think about this real quick. One question I like to ask about it, I'm a really big fan of situational questions. That helps me learn about why someone made a decision and why the the decision was made this way. So what I like to get from these answers are, what pushed you? How did you make the balance between intuition and also the knowledge that you have about a subject that made you make a decision? And also, I like to reflect from the candidate how they were able to convince a team of stakeholders that their decision was right. So in other words, I focus a lot on those situational questions, regardless of the problem. I love to extract those type of answers about how well the person is able to come up with something that makes sense and also convince others that this is the strategy to move forward. And if it doesn't work, here's plan B, or here's what we will try to mandate or to correct it and things like that. So I know it's a little bit on the cloud here, on this side, but this is what I like to focus on extracting from somebody being interviewed.
These are all great questions, man. I hope you guys are taking notes that are listening on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, on the podcast. Those of you guys listening live on LinkedIn, don't worry, this is recorded. Will be hosted on the podcast in a matter of 48 hours or so. So definitely go back and listen to this. All great advice. Matt, let's hear from you, and then we're going to start getting into some questions. I've got questions lined up from Albert, from Eric. I've actually got a question from Nisha that she had sent me on Slack. So I guess we'll go to Nisha's question first, then Albert, then Eric's. And Christine, I've got your question here on LinkedIn. So maybe we'll do Christine's question because it's directly related to what we're talking about here. And yeah, that'll kind of be the flow. Mr. Blaza, my friend, go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't been on the site. I haven't been on the hiring manager interviewing on the data science side. Did it in marketing, but that's completely different. As far as trying to ask questions as an interviewee, coming from a marketing background, I'm usually always asking about company dynamics because the communication is super essential. Because you can get super siloed really, really easily. So one of the questions I usually ask is like, how do they relate to the departments? So like, how do they communicate the requirements? How do you ask, what do you do when there's like a fire that has to be put out? Sometimes I've had an experience in the past where I've worked with companies and they would be a great data science team. You'd have like the data analyst, then you'd have the engineer, but these guys would never talk to like anyone else. I mean, you would exist in an isolation and then find out later, oh, there was a fire that you had to put out because Pixel wasn't firing on Google Analytics, or data wasn't ingesting properly from some source. So the communication is very important to me because like that not only saves me problems from dealing with stuff later, but also saves documentation and saves a lot of time and money from having to go back and do it over again. So I'm always asking when I'm in an interview, like, how do you communicate? How do you relate to other departments? Because it's really easy to get siloed.
These are all great questions. And these are questions that were really, if you were to ask these questions in an interview, it's like you'd stand out, I think, from the crowd by asking these type of questions. So definitely great advice from everyone here. Let's go quickly to Christine Seagrave's question from LinkedIn. She's saying, if an interviewer asks you about data mining, should you ask, how do employees normally mine data? Do companies have a standard process of data mining or ethical practice for data collection? In terms of standard process for data mining, that's the CRISP-DM, cross-industry standard process for data mining. I think that's what that stands for. That's one thing I can think of off the top of my head. Vin, what do you think? How would you answer this question?
I guess I'm hearing a bunch of different questions in there. Is what's the key question? I guess what are the frameworks for data gathering and data mining?
Yeah, I think so. Like she's asking, if an interviewer asks you about data mining, should you ask, how do employees normally mine data? I guess that, trying to unpack that question there. Yeah, it's a tough one, but I think that's what she's asking, is like, how do you talk about a standard process, I guess, or your standard process?
If they're asking you to give them a standard process, that's a pretty advanced question, because that's you're going straight into data governance there. And what are you data mining from? And I mean, that's a loaded question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I think that's a really good question to answer, because there are so many, so many different data sources. And I I would be asking more questions and taking most of the interview trying to figure out why they would ask me that question. That would kind of, yeah, I mean, outside of giving a couple of generic frameworks, pointing back to data governance frameworks, that's one of those questions that if I got in an interview, I would be asking more follow-up questions. Because anytime you start talking about data mining, I mean, are you mining it from processes? Are you mining it from websites? Are you mining it from, there's a lot there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Christine, I would look up Crisp DM if that's something that you're interested in. It sounds like you might benefit from learning about that. We'll go ahead and keep it rolling. When I asked Nisha's question that she sent on Slack, kind of relevant to what we're talking about here. Her question is, how long does a data science interview process take from start to finish? Is it a couple of months or is it days? How's it different in startups versus mid-size versus FANG versus state versus federal jobs? She wants to know all the different cross sections. She's asking for a friend of hers who's graduating in 2022 and is wondering when she should start applying. Well, I'm just going to assume this friend of yours is you, Nisha, and I would say start applying as soon as possible. As in terms of like the job search process, like, I mean, I've seen it take anywhere from like 2 weeks to 6 weeks. That's kind of been my standard range. That's the time frame I typically tend to assign to it. Mark, what about you? What do you think?
For me, the last time I did a job search, it took me about a month. But I think a key thing you can do to accelerate that is try to always have at least 2 interviews lined up, because they're going to ask like, "Hey, are you interviewing anywhere else?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm interviewing at this other company. I have my next interview next week. I'm really interested in this role. If you can accelerate this process, that'd be great." So you kind of turn the tables on that a little bit, which many times accelerates it, because they're like, "Hey, this is a good candidate. We want to move fast." My experience has only been in startups, so there's less bureaucratic red tape many times for that, so they can possibly move things a little bit faster. And I think the key thing too is, how do you define when to start? Is it from the time you sent the application versus the time you first had a first round interview, like a phone screen? I would say, like, from phone screen, it's just really dependent on the company. If they have their stuff together and know exactly what they're looking for, it could be 2 things. Either you're the right fit and they want to move really fast, or they're really picky and they may take their time to identify people. So I think it's so dependent on the company and the timing. I've realized, like, to not associate the data science job search with myself, but more so like, what's the right timing for things? That's been the main drivers, like, beyond the skill set. The skill set just opens the door, but does the timing allow for it to be a good fit for both of us?
How do you kind of gauge that, like that timing and judging if it's a good fit? Like, if you were in a situation, let's say, like, graduating in 2022, which is like 5 months away or 6 months away or whatever, like, when would you start applying for roles?
I would start applying, especially as a student. I feel like you have a little bit more leverage in the sense of that you have a more flexible timeline. So people will like hire you ahead of time, depending if they're looking for like certain cohorts for like new grads. So like, for example, like my first job out of grad school, I had my job in February and graduated like in June.
Mhm.
And so some jobs are like that. But another key thing too is, like, for me, my whole thought process is that I'm just gonna bomb my first 3 interviews. So I'm just gonna get those out of the way, especially if I'm rusty. Like, I remember my first time interviewing again for my last round of interviewing, I interviewed for this company that I thought was just gonna be a casual conversation with the hiring manager, and it ended up being a 1-hour conversation about the intricacies of data science, and I just forgot everything. I didn't even know what min-max scaling was. I just completely forgot it, and I was like, "Yep, I'm not getting hired there," right? And so I think, if anything, start early so you can get like all the failures out of the way and you just get into the flow, because like the data science job search doesn't really align with the job itself. So you have to pick up this whole new skill again of doing these brain teasers and case studies and jumping through these hoops.
Yeah, man, like the data science job search process is a freaking gauntlet. It is difficult. It's grueling, man. One hell of an experience. In my experience, I've seen the typical flow be like, HR kind of phone screen, then maybe like a quick tech screen, quick meaning, typically 1 to 3 hours for a screen, and then from there meeting people, then a take home assignment, and then more meetings of people. It's grueling, man. It's tough. Makiko, let's hear from you. I thought I saw you here.
Heyo.
Oh, yes, there you are. Hey, how's it going, Makiko?
Hey.
So, yeah, you got some good comments here about the job search process. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo everyone's thing about start as early as possible. It's also a little bit uneven. So for me, I've literally pivoted 3 times. So I felt like it was a little bit of a hard go for me, the first month or 2 of applying, because I was literally switching focuses, and I actually had to reskill in some of those areas as I was interviewing. So I think it's good to, in some ways, do it in 2 phases. You do the first phase where you're gathering as much information as possible without necessarily kind of burning any potential bridges that you are really interested in. That's when you have those conversations, and that's when you find out that you're missing a ton of stuff, or maybe what you're missing is the right messaging. So once you collect all that feedback, then you can kind of coalesce it and then figure out okay, what are the top 2 or 3 hot points that you need to be deeply going down. So most recently, when I was making the transition from a data scientist to a machine learning engineer, I had kind of overloaded a 6-month sort of study plan with God, it's embarrassing now. Multivariate experimentation, like Java, C++, autonomous vehicles. What they really cared about was do you know how to do a Git pull release? Do you test your code? Can you do Python? Can you do SQL? Do you love managed services in the form of GCP, AWS, right? So I had this plan, and then I would go to the interviews, I'd get murdered, just slaughtered. And then I'd go, okay, let's cross this off the list of things I'm not going to cover, and then bump up everything else. I think it's kind of you just need to get those first jitters out of the way, because data science interviews are just, they're wacko a little bit. Then you kind of can recollect, go, okay, let me focus deeply on these 2 or 3 trouble spots. And then when you get back out there, you'll be surprised at the number of opportunities you get. My first 2.5 months of the machine learning engineering job search, I was applying, I was not hearing anything. It was crap, am I doing something wrong? Applied for some data science interviews, got those interviews. So it's okay, maybe it's just the way I'm messaging it. The minute I was able to fix that bottleneck, suddenly I had 1 week I had 9 interviews, which was hectic, including tech screens, on screen, all that. And then within a period of 3 or 4 days, I got 3.5 offers. So it's very uneven, the job search. It really, really is. But usually there's just this one bottleneck that's in your interview process that if you can unlock it, it will just massively increase your conversion rate down the line. So that's kind of, start early, prepare for the first at-bats to just be bad, and collect the feedback, turn into an actionable plan, and then, execute, and then get back up there, get up to bat.
I love that conversion rate thinking and the way you're going about that. Thank you very much for sharing that, Mikiko. And speaking of bottlenecks, I think there's one bottleneck that happens at the top of every interview, and it's this "tell me about yourself" question, which Dylan has brought up here. Dylan, let's I'd love your comment here. Go ahead and talk to us about what you're talking about here. And then how about this, man? Why don't you give us your "tell me about yourself," and then I want to hear Eric's "tell me about yourself," and then I'll tell you mine. Because this is important, man. This is a hard, it's hard to get right, and it sets the tone for the entire interview. Dylan, so go for it.
Yeah. So I started having people reach out a year or 2 ago when I started posting on LinkedIn, just asking to hear my story. And yeah, you kind of start forming the parts of it that you like and you don't like. Kind of almost like Mikiko said, I don't like this part, so I'm going to throw it out and bring this new piece in. And so for me, it was really just talking to more and more people, as well, just friends back when I was in my old role and now new role, explaining that to them. Do I even remember mine now? It's very much Hi, I'm Dylan. I've been a data analyst for the last 4 years, worked in the CPG industry. I used to have kind of a list of projects that I worked on, but I don't even remember them now. I'm just kind of following along there, and then usually just talking a little bit about, like, I'm really passionate about machine learning. And while that's something that I haven't gotten to do in a role before, that's something that I study a lot of my own, as well, trying to be as active as I can in the data science community. And then you can see, here's my posting on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, today, right now, in this conversation shows the activity. So that kind of shows both sides of it. One, the prior work experience, and then two, the interest, so that if there is a hiring manager that's looking at you and they're saying, oh, well, maybe they don't have the right skills, if you show that you're passionate about those things, which is something, Harpreet, I know you've talked about so many times, is passion, they're a lot more likely to hire you and say, well, maybe they don't have all the skills, but they're willing to learn. So yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up, man. This should be interesting. I want to hear everybody just tell me about yourself now. This is what's going to go down. So let's go let's go to Eric, and then let's hear Eric's spiel, because he said you had one written down. Then I'll do my spiel. Then we'll go to Mark, because he has his hand raised. But you're gonna have to give us your tell me about yourself spiel, Mark, before you go for it.
All right. All right. Well, I'm like panicking inside. I feel like I'm in an interview all over again. So I would say, let's see, how do I start? So yeah, Eric, last time I was interviewing, I was in the Masters of Analytics at North Carolina State. And then this is something I'm just going to call out before I keep going. For people who don't come from a technical background, listen to this part, because this is something we've talked about a lot here. So I say for the past several years, I've worked in a lot of different industries. I worked in academia, local government, manufacturing, sales and marketing, lots of different stuff. And the reason that I am interested in like this role and in analytics in general is because in all my different roles, wherever I go, I end up finding data, or the data finds me. That's like just like a little phrase that I just made up once upon a time. I need to trademark it and get a nickel anytime somebody copies it. But anyway, saying that, because then I can say that's what's happened. And once upon a time, a couple of years ago, I had a phone conversation with a guy who said, we keep talking about marketing and you keep talking about marketing data. You could do that. Like, you could be a marketing analyst and work with data all the time. And that was what made me decide that I wanted to get into this program and pursue that path. And so here I am now. And so basically, I just kind of say that and then just throw in that, my interests, specifically projects I've worked on, are dealing with creating a good data pipeline that automated about 90 to 95% of our data entry for our sales and marketing process. And it's what I love to do. And I want to do it for, whatever company, or tie it into something like that is relevant to the interview.
Oh man, I love it. I'm glad this was kicked off. So I'll do mine. This is my standard spiel. I squeeze this canned response. It's canned, but it's the truth. It's my story, right? It's the response that I give anytime where there's tell me about yourself or whatever. Top of the interview, I just try to make this happen, and it goes like this. Well, I like to answer this question by talking about kind of my why. Why is it that I'm in data science? Why is it that I'm in this space? And it's because I want to help people make better decisions. And the way I see myself doing that is by being part of a team that develops data products that allow my stakeholders or clients to interact with data and information so they see the whole picture instead of just parts of it. And when I say data product, that could be anything from a dashboard, dynamic dashboard, static report. It could be a model serving predictions, just anything that is going to facilitate the decision-making process for my stakeholders. The way I see myself being a contributing member to a team that does this type of work is through what I think is my unique combination of education, skills, and experience. In terms of education, studied math, statistics, economics at the undergraduate, graduate level, taken several actuarial exams. So I have a really strong foundation, all the basics that makes it so I'm just unafraid of anything you throw at me. Like, I can go learn anything new without being afraid of it. In terms of technical skills, currently Python is my bread and butter language of choice. I'm comfortable with the modern data science stack in Python, NumPy, Pandas, Scikit-learn, PyTorch. I'm comfortable working out of Linux command line. That's so much fun for me. I love that. I'm comfortable with Airflow and Docker, and also SQL. Pretty good at SQL. Just the tools of the trade. I'm comfortable using them. I'm not scared to learn anything new that I need to learn, just because this is kind of a mindset, and I feel like I understand how to use one tool. I can learn any tool. In terms of work experience, I've worked as an actuary in the insurance industry, worked as a biostatistician in the pharmaceutical industry, worked as a data scientist in e-commerce, and I'm currently a data scientist in manufacturing. So I feel like I've just seen it all. I've seen so many different types of problem statements, and it's given me a good framework to match a solution strategy with a problem type. And I think that's what my varied experience has given me an opportunity to do. I got some extracurricular stuff on the side as well. Host of a decent podcast called The Artist of Data Science. I also do mentoring on the side at this coaching mentorship platform for data scientists. I've been doing that for 2.5 years, and that's an interesting experience because again, I get exposed to so much. I get to see so many different problem statements because I'm helping students work on take-home assignments, helping them work on the projects and things like that. And so I think it's this unique combination of education skills and technical experience that really separate me from whoever else it is that you're interviewing for this very job. And that's how every time, and you could tell like I just practice this. It's just I could do it in my sleep. Mark, go for it.
I wasn't planning on giving my pitch. I'll promise I'll give that. But one of the key things, I'm currently interviewing, not interviewing for companies, but being an interviewer at my company for data science roles. And we asked this question. I think I think one of the key things that I just want to note is like have your messaging down and don't ramble. I've seen the biggest pitfall from this phone screen I do every time is someone takes up a long time for this question, and then I have to cut out structured questions from the interview, and that just docks off opportunities for you to kind of sell yourself. So if you can get this down, you're set up for success for the rest of the interview. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But I guess mine, the way I do it more so linear in my journey into this role. But I say, my data science journey started off in grad school where I studied community health and prevention research at Stanford Medicine. At first I thought I was gonna be a doctor, and that's why I was at that master's program. But being at the School of Medicine, being cross-listed with classes, I realized grad school was not for me, and I couldn't do 4 more years of this. So I completely shifted. And so I had this skill set in R, statistics, experimental design, and also being exposed to tech being at Stanford, I realized like data science is actually something I could do and was actually very interested in. So from that point on, I decided to pursue data science. Surprisingly, my first job out of my master's wasn't in a data role. It was in operations, but I was still passionate about data science. So on the train ride to and from work, I taught myself Python and started automating all my workflows in my operations role. So all those Excel tasks, and I shared those scripts with my colleagues. They started using it. In addition, I picked up a second job as a data analyst back at Stanford while I was working in operations to kind of dip my toes to see if I really want to pursue this career. Turns out I absolutely loved it. Got to do some analyses, got published, and really refined my R skills in communicating those data statistics narratives. From there, I realized I want to go full in on this. So I quit those jobs, did a data science bootcamp, and one of my first jobs as a data scientist was at a company called Verona Health, where I worked with massive electronic health record data sets, where we had 80% of all electronic health records in the US for ophthalmology. So billions of records, use Spark, SQL, and I specifically helped our sales team better understand our data assets to sell to pharmaceutical companies. Unfortunately, I was laid off from that job in the middle of the pandemic, but it was the best thing ever because I found my next job, Humu, which ended up being one of the best things. Even though it wasn't in healthcare, it was around behavior change. And I got to basically do my dream of data science where I, one, build data products that are production level that go to our end users. 2, I do product analytics that help drive product decisions with our VP of product. And 3, I build data infrastructure for our startup to help define, what does our data warehouse looks like, and also build access to our data company-wide. And so those are my 3 main responsibilities. In the future, I'm mainly looking for how can I build even better data products at scale, including machine learning. And that's why I'll be interested in this role. And let's talk about how I potentially drive value for your company.
Absolutely love it, man. This is great. If anybody else would like to share their story, I'd be happy to hear it. I mean, me in particular, I'd be really excited to hear Vin and Greg's responses to these type of questions. So if you guys want to share that, please do. Go for it, Vin or Greg. Greg, go for it, Greg.
So this is some sort of a pitch, right?
Yeah, like kind of like in the interview where you have like that, tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume, kind of like, your, I guess elevate, pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to be the most non-technical, right? So I do have more than 10 years of experience, and I started in manufacturing. Being in manufacturing has helped me understand the requirements that companies need to follow based on their business models to input, uh, um, to transform and output a solution or a product for customers who are interested or going through certain pain points. And with that, with my background as an industry engineer, with a focus on supply chain and operations research. I've always gone to data to understand root causes of defects or poor mechanisms that hinder the optimal solutions that we're focusing on for the customers. And with that, I've had the opportunities to implement different solutions that are based on statistical control analysis, or optimal supply chain strategies to allow the service, on-time service of our customers so they can get products when they need it, where they need it, etc. In return, we would build some state-of-the-art networks to know where to stage our products, our raw materials, when to buy, to strategically put some purchase, strategies with our vendors, and also knowing where to build and when to build warehouses. Now, with that, I transferred to different positions where I was focusing on quality inside of manufacturing sites, and even after that became a product manager, focusing on optimizing pricing for my products. I was responsible for the value chain of a portfolio of products, and my role there was to understand what were the drivers of cost and what were the drivers of price leakage and also price loss opportunity. And with that, I had access to a vast amount of data about how our pricing strategy was either helping us gain extra margin or lose margin to competitors, or because we weren't able to serve the customers the way they expected us to serve them. And with that, I started being curious about how to manage and manipulate this data, and taught myself how to use different tools, analytical tools, and even taught myself how to use tools like Power BI to create dashboards that would help my stakeholders make decisions faster, and also be able to create some quotes for customers much faster and more accurately that would price them at the right level, that would help them make decisions quickly in terms of booking contracts for 2 years, 3 years, etc. That allowed me to create a compelling story for where I am today at Amazon. And there, I joined a culture that has been open to innovation or thinking big. And with that, I was able to surface some pain points in the company and opened up the ideas of leveraging vast amount of data and even AI to tackle some process that were previously manual, and use data to automate these processes. And with that, the focus was to make sure that through automation, we're ensuring that the customers using our products were being safe, and that they were, trusting the way we did business in these active geographies.
I love it, man. Again, hope everybody's taking notes, man. These are great ways to answer that tell me about yourself question. That's just talking about just straight delivering value. Like, this is what I've done. This is what I can do for you. I love that. That's awesome. Vin, what about you, man? Do you have like an elevator pitch or spiel?
You sure you want me to do this one?
Yeah, hell yeah, man.
Because mine's totally different. It's like not even, I don't know if it's relevant.
Let's hear it, man.
All right. Let me get into the zone. All right. 25 years in tech, last 10 years in data science, machine learning, deep learning, advanced analytics, all all the great buzzwords. I've built and led teams at every phase of the software development lifecycle and the machine learning lifecycle. I work with clients from startups to Fortune 100 companies. My approach, built over the last 10 years, has resulted in delivering products to market with revenue streams in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I help clients build out AI strategies from start to finish and help them realize their goals for both cost savings and revenue generation using my just end-to-end approach that starts with strategy, starts with transforming the business model, the operating model, providing an AI strategy, which rationalizes exactly why you're adopting the technology. It's going to help you understand the budgeting side of it. It's going to help you create a managed cadence. You're going to build out a value stream that you can manage so that you don't get sucked into the day-to-day workflow activities. So you, as the C-suite and board of directors, are going to be able to track these projects in a way that you track all the rest of them. So it's going to make sense. You're going to realize tangible returns on your investment. I'm going to help you do that at every phase, from strategy planning, strategy implementation, execution planning. I'm going to help you build out your data and analytics organization, and I'm going to help you with the execution phase, actually creating the workflow and executing one end-to-end project.
Hell yeah, man.
That's my sales pitch.
That's why you guys should sign up for his course. I think you've got a session this tomorrow, right? You got a session tomorrow. And how often do you do this? Every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, something like that?
No, my next one is August 2nd and 3rd.
August 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, the one for next week actually sold out. So yeah, it's August 2nd and 3rd.
It's worth it. I was in a session a couple of weeks ago. I know Mark was as well. Austin Lovelace was as well. And that's why you guys should take that course.
I just want to quickly note, it changed the trajectory of my job and how I perceive it. Like the way I approach problems now, and like I already have meetings with different leaders to talk about data strategy and like how I frame things. Like this course is probably one of the best things you can do for your data career.
Man, yeah, 100% agree, man. So that's great, man. Hopefully everybody's taking good notes here. Let's move on to the rest of the questions. I got questions from Albert, Eric, and then Mark. If anybody else has questions on any of the platforms where you are watching this, I'm keeping an eye out. So drop your question in the chat, or if you're in this room and you have a question, go for it. Albert, let's hear from you. Actually, first, you talked about how in the military you had they had you practice your spiel 100 times. Give us your quick spiel, and then let's jump into your question.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Hopefully my audio is not cutting out. I've changed locations. I'm over by my kid's ball field right now. But
it's perfect clear.
Awesome. I cut the video to up the audio. Yeah, so 23 years in the Marine Corps, and throughout that, I've been a data guy. I say that I'm the only Marine that smiles when he sees a spreadsheet. So I started out in logistics and was hashing through maintenance reports and trying to explain those to commanders who didn't understand code, didn't understand maintenance life cycles, and that sort of thing. About 9 years in, we got ourselves into a war, and I decided I wanted to be an officer. So I signed up for the artillery, which is a lot more data heavy than you might think. Through my 14 years as an artillery officer, served in some austere environments. I doubt you've got anybody that has built visualizations in wood huts in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've done that. To include in Afghanistan, I saw a gap in the way we were doing things as we wound down in not Anbar province. Shoot, I'm mixing up my Iraq and my Afghanistan. In Helmand province, we were overcommitting to certain areas. I developed a visualization for the operations officer so that he could see where our ops were overlapping, and that he could spread out his efforts. And that one slide saved millions of taxpayer dollars, potentially human lives. After that, I came back. I served at Headquarters Marine Corps. At Headquarters Marine Corps, I was in charge of half of the Marines in the Marine Corps, moving them around the map and deciding where they were going to go, how to get them to re-enlist. So you're talking 100,000 Marines, each on a 4-year contract, each in a cohort that comes up every 4 years, and you have to figure out how to get them to re-enlist, how to get them to commit to the bases where they may or may not want to go in places that aren't necessarily so nice. Involves a lot of crunching of numbers, and that was a a great challenge for me. At the tail end of that, I managed to go get accepted into a fellowship, which is very selective. Only a certain number of Marines were picked for it. And I got to go work with DARPA and work on some of their advanced projects, some of which delved into the machine learning and robotics and automation and artificial intelligence fields. Post that, I got myself a master's degree in analytics through Naval Postgraduate School. I paid back the Marine Corps for the time they invested in me. And now I'm retiring, pivoting into analytics. In my free time, I love to work on a podcast and a YouTube channel, incidentally called How to Get an Analytics Job, which is why I was interested in it in the first place. Took over their LinkedIn page and I 20 times multiplied their followership thus far in about a 6-month period. So that's what I have to offer and bring to the table. My skill set involves some heavy Excel skills. I am working on developing my Tableau and R coding skills, and I'm getting pretty good with SQL. And due to the adaptability and the environments that I've been through and the situations I've been put in, I can handle any problem you throw at me.
I love it.
How's that?
I love it. Absolutely love it, man. That was awesome. All right, so
yeah, it changes every time.
That's good, man. I mean, it's a good structure. I like the structure, and like that's how you guys. These are all great examples of how to answer that "tell me about yourself" question. I feel like that is the bottleneck for so many people, and if you can get that down, it'll make your interviewing process so much more streamlined. You'll get so many more conversions. But Albert, go for it, man. You got a question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just in dealing with my time on this internship that is now kind of wrapped, and I did some things with my LinkedIn posting where I kind of noticed that I was spending a shit ton of time in engagement and just getting in conversations with people, some productive, some wonderful, some kind of not a waste of time, but it didn't do a whole lot for me. And you get those people that just ask you like, hey, what's your advice on getting into data analytics? Well, shit, I mean, where do I start? I'm not actually in it currently, but I could talk for days about that. So the more and more of those that I get, and the more and more time it seems to take to sort of engage with people and build your brand and build a network, I'm just wondering, the people that have far more vast networks than me, how do you guys budget your time when it comes to just dealing with people and being nice and answering messages and going on LinkedIn comment threads and stuff like that, being men and women of the people, if you will?
Yeah, definitely. So to me personally, man, I don't respond to anybody. Like I get messages that won't respond, or I'll respond with just a link to this very thing and say you can come during these 2 times during the week and ask me whatever you want, but I'm only available these 2 times, and just do like a keyboard shortcut for that. So that's my strategy to that. In terms of posting and stuff like that, when you do see consistent posts from me, it's usually because I spent 3 hours on a Sunday and I scheduled out the entire week. When you don't see consistent posts from me, that means that I forgot, or I just didn't have time to schedule it, and I'll just sporadically randomly post stuff. Eric, what's your strategy? Because you are the people's choice for LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I don't schedule posts because I can't think of stuff to say very far ahead of time usually, even though I have like a list of ideas. Mostly it's for inspiration, not for scheduling. But for like staying in touch with people is I took a note from Greg Coquillo and I try to respond to every single comment on my posts. Because I know that meant like the world to me when like Greg responds to my comments and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's Greg Coquillo, and so like that meant a lot to me. And so like I want other people to feel seen like that, and then the other piece is, I mean, as far as like balancing it, I guarantee I don't get as many messages as someone like Harpreet and company, but I just try to be realistic about it. Like I try to at least respond to pretty much everybody, to at least say, hey when someone just says hey, but I don't necessarily want to like lean into it and like try and make them have a conversation with me. And so, if they get to it and they want to have a conversation with me, I'm open to it. But otherwise, I don't like try and like drag someone. So, what are your questions about data science? Um, and so, yeah, just try and be realistic with the time that I have. And I definitely have some messages that are unanswered right now. Like I'm looking at them in my queue here. I'm like, probably need to get to a couple of those. So, yeah.
Greg, what's your strategy? Thank you, by the way, Eric. I love that. You're far nicer than I am. Greg, let's hear from you.
Yeah, it's to me, it's about making people feel valued for sure. If somebody took the time to respond to a post I made, whether it's a thank you or gave an opinion, I try to make sure to go back to it and respond. Um, what I struggle with is the personal messages, and I have a quick test that I do when I read someone's personal message. I say, is that Googleable? Like if it's Googleable, I ignore it completely. I'm like, you could have taken the time to Google it and find the answer. So why ask me? So I just ignore. And I do get questions that are quite difficult, and I take some time to respond to them. But in terms of post, really, my focus is to continue to access different subjects from different resources and come up with an opinion about it and share it with the world or my community. And with that, I stay open to constructive criticism or a simple thank you. Or regardless, it's about making people feel welcomed always. And subconsciously, the person will come back for more, right? To be able to interact with me and give me more feedback. And either way, that helps me grow. That helps the other person grow, and that's what the community should be about. It shouldn't be about pointing the finger or surfacing the things that the other one is doing wrong, and it's just about very fruitful conversation and mutual learning and growth. And that approach has basically helped me gain a lot of engagement over the past year, which led me to where I am today in terms of the level of community I was able to build under 1 year on LinkedIn.
Great advice. Love it. Eric and Greg, you guys both make me sound like a dick. But like great advice. I love it. Mikiko, let's hear from you.
Don't you worry, Harpreet. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna make you sound so friendly right now. So nice. So
Thank
nice.
you.
Because my approach, I actually went the opposite way around. So I used to be a lot more engaged on LinkedIn. And I don't know if people had noticed this. I had actually deactivated my account for like a hot minute. And I had to reactivate because I was applying for like a part-time fellowship to whatever, right? So they're like, you need a LinkedIn account. I'm like, damn it. Okay, so I have to reactivate it. So it's only there for now. I went the opposite way because I think I was inspired by Deep Work, where he says like quit social media. So, and I think there's two questions to kind of ask yourself actually, that are sort of in line with that. And the first one is kind of like I don't want to say what game are you in, but what is the core value prop of your sort of professional arc, and what is the value that you are currently bringing? So for me right now, for example, my core value, and considering to start a new job, is to be like a really good engineer. And for me to be a really good engineer and to, my goal is to get promoted within like a year or 2 years, which would be considered actually very accelerated for the company I'm at. That means I have to essentially be producing like certain deliverables or certain work, but I also don't want to be doing that outside of work. So what that means is that I need to kind of maintain focus within work. But more importantly, I actually need to be doing some stuff outside to continue growing in that. So I had to kind of do a quick audit and basically go, what is the contribution of LinkedIn or social media or certain kinds of social media like Instagram or whatever to that ultimate goal of kind of professional and personal actualization, right? And then once you determine that actually, you do need to be engaged on a platform like LinkedIn for a certain reason, I think at that point, then you can kind of do another audit and go like, what are the sort of engagements that are most sort of productive, right? So all the people who would ping me and do the hey or how do you get into data science or all that, like they're asking for really curated, personalized advice. And I figured, so Cal Newport, he has this thing where basically he doesn't put up his email address. And if you do kind of message him, you have to fill out a form and indicate what it is, and he'll kind of get back to you at some point. I don't do it quite like that, but what I did was I took the top 10 common questions. I actually put it in a bunch of like Medium posts or LinkedIn write-ups. And what I asked is that if people message me, first go through and read through the links. If they still have questions, I am absolutely available to answer them. But if I give them the 15, 20 minutes, they need to give me 15, 20 minutes. Because at the end of the day, it is about reciprocity and it's mutual respect. And the standards that you set for how people interact with you is exactly how they treat you. So if you are basically someone who is constantly at other people's beck and calls, if you respond to kind of low value treatment and all that other stuff, they're actually not going to respect you. It's like people paying $5 for something that is $1,000 value. They don't respect you. They don't respect the $1,000 like luxury item more. Like they actually respect it at the $5 they paid it. Unless they're like some antique dealer, which they know they can then flip it for 500. But they will literally respect you at that value they set for you. So part of what you can do in terms of filtering and letting people treat you with the respect that you do deserve is to set that bar. And there's like a number of ways to kind of filter it. But that's how I treat the personal messages. If people comment on like posts and stuff like that, I will absolutely respond to them because in a way I'm like, I put myself out there, so I should be respecting that you gave me your attention and time, and I'll respond to that. But if you come into my inbox, if you come into my in-mail, I hope you're not wasting it on like a hey or how'd you get into data science. And the other part too is like, it's also great for content generation because if you get asked the same like 5-10 questions, you can actually create a YouTube video and you can kind of link it. So that's one way to turn around. But yeah, so actually relative to our I'm actually very mean because now it cuts down like all my interactions to like 1 or 2 people like a week, which is great. I love it. Yeah, so there's all strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like for me, it's just I tell people just come straight to my office hours. Like that's the only time I have. Like you can find me there, and that's it. So Albert, I hope you got some good answers out of this. There's a lot of great comments here in the chat. Look, if you guys are watching on LinkedIn, if you're watching anywhere else, the only way you can see the wonderful comments is if you join the Zoom room. So you're missing out if you're not here. Albert, hopefully that answered your questions. Hopefully you got some good ideas. We've got a couple other questions in the queue. Let's go to Eric, and then we'll go to Mark.
Okay, so I have a Streamlit app that I have had deployed on Streamlit sharing, right? But I want it to be I took the repo to be private, so it's not public anymore. And Streamlit sharing, if you want to private, you have to pay like $40 a month, something like that. And I'm not going to do that. So I wanted to put it on Heroku, but Heroku doesn't work with SciPy. So that was the end of that for whatever reason. So I have been trying to deploy it on GCP. And so I'm really glad that Makiko and Mark are here because I can get I tried to deploy it on App Engine and couldn't get it to work. And so then I tried to deploy it on Cloud Run and I can get it to run on Cloud Run for like a couple of hours and then it stops working and it'll load the page and we'll do nothing else. And then after that, it won't even load the page or anything like that. So I have a couple of questions. My first question is, what the heck is a YAML file? Like I have them and I use them and they seem to be working kinda, but I don't know what a YAML file is. What is a YAML file?
It's a good question. I always thought it was just a text file that you can use to build environments. But let's hear from Makiko, Mark, or Vin. If you guys want to chime in here, Makiko, go for it.
YAML is the third language in the trifecta of Python, SQL, and that you need to learn to be a data scientist or a machine learning engineer. You can also think of it as bastardized JSON, and that's
Okay.
yeah. No. It's literally that simple. And there's a funny podcast on MLOps where someone was like, "What are the languages you should learn?" He's like, and the guy's like, "Well, I could say Scala, but let's be honest, we all do everything in YAML, whether it's like infrastructure as code or whatever." No, that's all that it is, and it basically just looks like a dictionary or a Python dict in a file. It's very similar. So the trick a lot of times with dealing with YAML files is just understanding like what are the keys that you need to be putting in, where are the values, and then make sure you're not accidentally putting like parentheses around like numeric values or something like that. So that's the first one. And I'll let Mark jump in on any sort of potential troubleshooting ideas. I think the other part too that stuck out is I think Cloud Run, it was supposed to mimic, it's supposed to be very similar to AWS's like Lambda functions or the Lambda architecture. So I don't know if it's actually meant to run apps or to be like a fully online server. But Mark, am I misreading that, or am I misremembering that?
My experience with GCP has just been relegated to BigQuery for the most part, so I will not have the information.
I'll say
for that.
like I think after reading some stuff, I wonder if there might be a conflict with Streamlit specifically in Cloud Run, something that has to do with a WebSocket. And I don't even know what a WebSocket is, but I'm wondering if I'm trying to understand then like what's the difference between Cloud Run, App Engine, and then like what's it, Kubernetes Engine, GKE? Some K is Kubernetes, I know that. So I'm trying to understand and figure out to really understand the difference between those two. And so I think there are those three, I guess. And so it seems like App Engine's not going to work. And so I was wondering if anybody had any ideas about Cloud Run and what might be the problem there.
I have
So
a
something.
quick question. Oh, go ahead.
No.
I was about to say, like, it seems like you're having two problems right now. Like, one is just cloud infrastructure, and the other one is putting up your Streamlit app. I guess, like, could you potentially just focus on one problem, like just a simple web page or something super simple, so you only have to focus on that, just so you learn like the end-to-end for the cloud component, and then once you learn that, then you can make it more complex and add your Streamlit app.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've had the Streamlit app working elsewhere, and so it was like, oh, this must be easy. And then as soon as I tried to like put it into, that's like round peg, square hole, whatever. And so, yeah, maybe I do need to break it down further. Mikiko, what
So
were
I
you gonna
think,
say?
well, I think something that helps. So before like I got the gig at Mailchimp, I had never ever used GCP, not one bit. AWS girl. So for everyone who's on the call who's like, oh, does it matter what like managed service you use to get a job as an engineer or data scientist? No, actually it doesn't, because they're very, very similar. Just GCP is a lot more curated offering. Something that I think helps is understanding where the categories of the products fall. And so Coursera has some really nice GCP courses that they've hosted, and I can ping the links to you, where they will break down the categorizations, because I struggled with that at first. And the first step, I think, is being able to break the products down into they break into data, compute, storage, compute, services, and I think orchestration. I think those are the four like broad, and there's something else. Those are like the four broadest categories of products they have in terms of the ML data science offerings. So I think that's the first step, because once you can kind of like figure out the categorizations, then it's a question of picking within the category the right product. So for example, very similar to AWS, AWS has a data product, Redshift, right? Versus I think Iceberg, I want to say something like that, where like, not Iceberg, but there's a product that AWS has where it's meant for long-term storage, very infrequent access.
Glacier.
Right? And
Glacier.
yeah, Glacier. Close. It was ice water something.
It's cold.
It was cold, I know, right? Versus like Redshift, or I forgot what was another one. So GCP is actually very similar, and actually that can kind of help. If you find there's been some charts where they compare like products for AWS and GCP, but literally they have like a workflow of potential architectures. If you're used to dealing with AWS, that can kind of help actually. because a lot of times they will just create managed services over very similar things. So for Google GCP, GKE is Google Managed Kubernetes. So it's just a wrapper around the Kubernetes open source project, right? AWS also has something. So I think that would be a first step, is understanding the rough categorizations of the products. Then being able to relate it to any kind of existing managed service products that you have. And then picking up appropriately. And then I can also link to you one of the courses I thought that was like really useful on
That'd
the
be
GCP
great.
side.
That'd be really helpful. Thanks.
Because we have GCP hosted in-house for the data scientists to show demos specifically. So I know they're able to make it work.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be really helpful. And thanks for the link, Mark. Appreciate it.
Been any insight here into this issue that Eric's dealing with? Any?
No, all I'm going to do is ask 50 questions and probably not help you at all. So Mark and Makiko have just probably done a whole lot more than I could.
Yeah. Do you guys be fucking with the make files? Y'all be fucking with the make files? No, I've just been learning about them. They're good, man. I like me a good make file. Is that something we should learn? Is that something data scientists should learn how to use? Vin, what do you think? No, it's not worth it. Am I just wasting my time learning about this?
I mean, yeah. If you're in data science, there's somebody else probably handling that whole process. I mean, if you're at a startup and you're doing really, really like end-to-end everything, yeah, okay, you gotta learn make files. But yeah, I mean, how much of this do you want to do the build too? I mean, how much of this do you really want to get into? And how much is it going to take away from, the core value? Because I mean, this is what I talk to a lot of people about is you've got a core value proposition. And as a data scientist, you can dilute that by learning all sorts of these rabbit hole type concepts. And it's one of the yourself because you end up becoming more of a software developer, and that's not really your value prop. You definitely need to know software development. You need to know software engineering, but you get to a point where focus on your core value.
Awesome. Yeah, thank Matt. Appreciate that. Putting it in a perspective for me. Let's go to Mark's question. And after Mark's question, we got Greg. I don't see any of the questions in any of the platforms. So after Greg, I think we can wrap it up, but go for it, Mark.
Yeah, so I started this new thing in my career, which is really exciting. I signed up to be a mentor for this mentorship program for data science, which is really exciting. It's something I've been wanting to do. I finally feel ready that I can be a mentor to someone. It's all new to me, which is fun, but I'm curious, and it can go either way. For people who have mentored, what are some things you maybe wish you did different or like set you up for success? And then to people who haven't been a mentor, what are aspects of a great mentor you've had? Because I'm trying to be the best mentor for the people I'm helping out.
That's a good question, man. Yeah, I mean, let's hear from maybe Matt or Dylan or Asha on this one, or Vivian. Talk to us about this. What are some good qualities of a good mentor that you guys have had?
For me, the best quality of the mentor I found out is patience. I think my mentor wanted to bang her head against the brick wall every time I asked her something that was really obvious for her. So, I mean, patience in that, they know how to break things down. So, I mean, by breaking things down to the smallest concepts. So I didn't understand how classes worked in Python. And I'm just like, what is this crazy hoop stuff that she's talking to me about? But she broke it down into concepts I could understand. Basically use an analogy. And so she said, okay, this with object-oriented programming, the class is this. This is it's a group right here, but it's a group of tools that you can use with it. I forget exactly how she did it. It was related to a washing machine, and then a iron. But anyways, point is, she took the time to break it down, use a concept that I didn't understand, didn't use technical terms, and then really walk me through it step by step. And then along the way, she didn't really hold my hand. She let me go out on my own, I made mistakes. And then she said to me, okay, this is where where she steps in. So a good mentor for me is someone who not only breaks stuff down, but they step in along the way and let you fail forward.
I love that. Definitely agree with that. Dylan, Vivian, Mikiko, Greg, anybody else been talk to us about some great mentors? Vivian or Dylan, go for it.
Yeah, I've got one here. Just kind of at a more high level, kind of matching to their personality. So I'm quite a quiet, introverted person, and I needed a lot of encouragement, especially early on in my career. Standing up to speak in front of even one person was something that would make me kind of keel over and want to puke. So having that encouragement from someone that I respected and that I'd seen them do was something that I really required. But I think it depends on the person and kind of matching to their personality. And yeah, just kind of figuring out who they are and what they might need. And honestly, they probably won't know. I didn't know that I just needed encouragement and needed someone to kind of give me that permission. But as soon as I had that, like the first year or two of my career completely changed. I was able to, actually talk to people instead of just sit there and be that data analyst that nobody knew and nobody really cared about.
Thinking about this, I'm not sure that I have some like perfect nutshell of advice for you or something, but I was thinking about one of the mentors I had in college. I had a professor that I really got along with, and so I ended up doing a lot of like student teaching stuff with him, and he became kind of a mentor. But something he would always do is like, along the encouragement route, he always saw like more potential in me than I saw in myself. And like, he saw my strengths where I like was blind to them because I was too insecure or, for whatever reason. And then he created opportunities for me to like expand myself. And then he was always like pushing back too. So like he'd create an opportunity for me and I'd be like, I can't do that. Like, what do I know? I can't do that. And then he'd be like, yes, you can, it's fine, just do it. Like, and he'd like kind of like force me into the deep end there to like go do the thing. And then, maybe I fail, maybe I did an awesome job, maybe I need more hand holding or something, but like either way in the doing of the thing, I gained a lot of confidence and learned a lot of things. And, and I don't know. I guess I was just thinking about that principle in psychology that like they found that it's actually like your sense of self like follows your behavior. So like when you do a lot of things or like practice competent, are engaged in things and like either fail or like are good at it either way, like when you're engaged in doing things, that's like it like informs your sense of self of like, oh, so like with data science, like by engaging in data science, whether you're successful or not, like by just engaging in it all the time, that's what gives you the sense of like, I'm a data scientist, like I'm a real data scientist, is because you have that like proof in front of you of like, I'm doing these things of data science. And like, so that's where I get that proof from. And so like, I guess that's what I would say is like to like try to create even the smallest opportunities, like for anybody you mentor, to kind of like do the things that maybe they feel most insecure about or whatever, like, because by doing them, even if they fail, it's going to like inform their sense of self of like, oh, I am someone who can do machine learning or, whatever thing, because they're engaged in it.
I love this. This is all excellent. Asha, go for it.
I think the best thing that my mentor did for me was not hold my hand. Initially this was frustrating. I'd come with a problem. I'm like, I have this problem. Can you help me? Then he'll be like, what do you think the answer is? I'm like, I came to you with this problem because I don't know it. But this helped me. This helped me with the research. Like I learned how to research on problems. And the best thing I think I learned from all this is, the best thing I was told is, you need to learn how to fail fast. You need to fail, but fail very fast so that you can move forward. But if you don't fail, you'll never learn. You need to fail fast. That was the best advice I got. Fail and fail very fast.
I love it. Thank you, Asha. Mikiko, go for it.
Yeah, so one thing I'll say is that a mentoring relationship is a little bit weird. And I don't mean inappropriate. It's a little bit odd because we relate to patterns in our lives, right? So some people try to liken a mentorship to like a parent relationship, right? or a relationship with a commanding officer, like in a hierarchy or something like that, right? And it's a little bit weird because on the one hand, you are in some ways being entrusted with someone's like deepest wishes and hopes for their future. And that's a very, I don't want to say fragile thing. It is an act of trust, right? So you want to respect that trust. On the other hand, mentees are not your family. They can eventually be family and friends, but they are not that from the get-go. And so sometimes it's hard to remember those boundaries because something can happen in their lives and you want to help, you want to get involved, but it's kind of like, helping anyone. There is a very, very deep rabbit hole you could go down. And at the end of the day, you still need to maintain your own like mental health, your own boundaries, So I think the 3 pieces of advice I'd give is first off, understand your mentee, really understand their personality, really understand their hopes and dreams, what they want to get out of it, and try to, I don't want to say custom tailor your approach to them in that regard, but understand that, for certain sort of personality types or, where people are in their career, some approaches will work better than others. So you don't want to lay down the hammer if they are feeling really fragile. Their family has said to them, what the hell are you doing? Why'd you quit your job to go, transition into another career? That is not the time to go hammer down on them. That might be later once they built up a little bit more and they're bought in and you kind of like haze them in. That's when So like understand who they are, understand their personalities, and really kind of have them focus on their dreams. The second piece is that you cannot be doing the work for them. It's like bodybuilding and like training someone to be a bodybuilder. They ultimately have to have that motivation deep down, and you will not give that to them. What you can do is you can unlock that permission to, dream, that permission to feel like they can do it, but you cannot be giving them that permission. You cannot be giving them the actual motivation itself. They have to feel that, they have to want that. But when you do have those mentees, those are the best because they want it and they're like, yes, like help us get to where we need to go. Thirdly, I think the other thing to remember is that where they want to go and need to go will not always be where you think they should go. So make sure to be aware of like, your bias or like their dreams. And then I'd say the fourth is you can always sort of like lay down boundaries. It's very, very important. It's important for them. Actually, in the fifth one, sorry, I'm talking a lot, is teach them skills, like teach them how to fish, don't fish for them. So help them understand how to ask good questions, how to troubleshoot, Don't go troubleshooting on overstack for them. Don't do that. But help them understand like what are approaches or what are processes or structures or frameworks that they can then use to proceed. Those are the 5 mistakes I personally made when I was at DSDJ. So, I've made all those before. So, and yeah, you don't always get it right on the first or second or third or fourth try, but.
So let's do this. Let's hear from, thank you, Makiko, by the way. Let's hear from Matthew. He's got some great comments in there. Then from Matthew, we'll go to Greg, and then we'll go from Greg's response to this right into your question that you had. Matthew, go for it.
Oh, yeah, no, I just said in the comments that eventually if you have a good mentor, you end up becoming their equal. And yes, I heard Al rule of 2, so that's it. But the point is that the mentor is, for me, at least with my mentor, she told me is that my point here is to get you to the point that you can kind of challenge me. So I'm not mentoring you so that I'm mentoring you because I want to help you, but I'm also mentoring you so that I can have a gut check. So when you get to the point where you're not my equal, but you can actually understand what I'm doing, then you can tell me, hey, this is are you sure you're doing this right? Are you doing this wrong? She told me that I'm mentoring you because I'm trying to learn I'm trying to have someone who not only can gut check me, but can make me feel like they can challenge me, push me farther. And if I mentor you to the point that you can actually do that, then I'm doing my job.
Thank you very much, Matt. Greg, let's go to you.
Yeah, for me, a good mentor is actually someone who can help the mentee on the road to self-discovery without explicitly saying, oh, you will be XYZ in 10 years. You build an environment for that person to discover on their own. And with that, the way I see it is the mentor is like a simulation. Simulation in the sense of, bye Mikiko, simulation in the sense of testing different questions and running them through the mentor before actually trying it. That's how I like to think about that relationship. Really, when you need a mentor is because you have different questions, you're not sure about whether you should act on them or not. And a mentor gives you some sort of simulated outcomes or outputs if you select option A, B, C, etc. So in that case, to me, a mentor who allows that person to explore the possibilities before that person takes action is to me a good mentor. Another piece of that too is once you decide to be a mentor, always make sure to look for an opportunity to mentor someone outside of what you already know. Mentoring also is you growing. How about as a data scientist, you mentor someone who's non-technical? That helps you learn more about yourself as well. You're helping another person learn more about your world and you're learning about their world. You start finding the common points, you start tinkering with ideas, and you both grow. A mentor-mentee relationship should be back and forth. Growth doesn't only happen at the mentee side, on the mentee side. It should be on the mentor side as well. So don't get bogged down by, oh, I need to only mentor somebody who's in the same type of structure or department as I am. Think about that growth mindset as a mentor as well and grow with that. So with that, I know, Asha, you may have a comment or question, but I'll let you go and then I can ask my question and then we can take it from there.
Go for it, Asha.
No, sorry, if you're not finished with the topic, I was going to push the topic away from the mentorship. So if you have anything on the mentorship, feel free to finish it before I ask.
I think Greg's going to jump into his question, and then we can tack you on right after Greg. How's that sound? Cool.
Perfect.
All right, cool. I'll come back to
no, no problems. So my question was about a sniff test. So what are the sniff tests that you would do as a data scientist on an AI startup, early stage, that you think will have a competitive edge or advantage that you either want to join or invest in? What are the quick sniff tests that you can do to understand where they are and where you think they will be 5-10 years from now?
Does the startup sound like it's solving a problem that I've had that I didn't find a solution for before, but you guys are solving it? That to me is like my sniff test. Like, is this thing solving a actual problem that I've had or people I know have had? That's kind of my sniff test. Vin, what about you?
The best one I heard, and I think Bessemer was the one who published this one a couple of years back, is they said that for them to evaluate investing in a startup, they needed to see one of two things: novel model, novel data set. And if they don't see one of those two things, they don't see, like a walled garden, they don't see any sort of competitive advantage. And so that for me has always been kind of the first question that I'll ask is, what's unique? Do you have access to unique data that nobody else has? And normally the answer is no. Do you really have a unique or novel model? Have you discovered something that nobody's discovered before? And normally the answer is no. And from there, you can kind of have a more honest conversation, because then you take the buzzword out and it's like, okay, so what'd you do? Because now you're dealing with a traditional software company. And yeah, they're using machine learning. There are models there. They're using data, but they're really more of a traditional software company paradigm. And you can evaluate the investment or, look at the implications of their technology in that sort of a paradigm using traditional rules. But when you actually get, because every once in a while you get a company that does have a unique data set, they have access to data, or they've been able to curate a data set nobody else has. From there, I really want to see what they've built and dive into product, because a lot of the time that startups have limited amount of money. And so you can either build amazing data, build amazing model, or build a product. And typically you can't do two of those. And so a lot of the time when I find that this is a company it's got something unique, it's got something that's going to be a competitive advantage for them, at least midterm, I look at the product and it's like, this is not here yet. And then it's kind of seeing, do they have a path to get this to market? Do they have a path to get this to the point where it's usable, meets business needs? And so that's kind of where I go is, try to branch it into one or two directions and then figure out from there how to assess it.
So it's interesting that you talk about novel model. And from a novel model, you don't mean that prior to that startup launching, they did not necessarily spend some time researching, transforming, studying that data, and creating some sort of model that nobody else has, or it could be, a regular. Or do you mean that it's a brand new algorithm, or do you mean that it's an existing algorithm that's structured or architectured differently from what we already know out there?
No, I'm looking for novel. I mean, brand new. They've discovered something that hasn't been generally figured out. It's rare. But every once in a while, you see a startup that's figured something out. And then you have to ask yourself, how long is it going to take for someone else to figure out the same thing that they have? And that's, it's the two pieces of the evaluation. There are a lot of novel model architectures that don't get published. We're kind of used to seeing all of, Google's and everybody else's models, but the stuff they know, like they're bleeding edge in most large tech companies, that's not published. And so even though we think, these models here are bleeding edge, no, they're not. I mean, they're usually 3 years, maybe more than that, sometimes old. And so there are tons of model architectures out there that are not published, that have not really been explored, especially in reinforcement learning. There's so much down that line of evaluation from an architecture standpoint that hasn't been published, that is novel, that's being used in some small startups right now to solve some really interesting problems. And so, no, I'm looking at actual novelty. It's new. They've discovered something.
Thank you.
Mark, go for it.
Yeah, this example is more so come from one of my lessons learned. And the last time I tried to build a product and business model around it, we created our pitch deck, and we were, trying to talk to the Gregs of the world. And so to prepare for that, I went to my friend who was a VC and said, like, hey, we want to just practice our pitch. Please tear into us, right? And VCs are great at that. And so we did it, and he said, honestly, I wouldn't invest in this. And the reason why is you didn't communicate to me the sense of urgency as to why this needs to happen right now. And that really just really shifted my perspective of how I pitch things, and how I build products and what I build on, because I can build a really novel thing that's really cool, but if people don't need to purchase it right now, then why are they going to invest in it? And so that was kind of a key moment for me, from my friend. And I think that's the urgency component may not be for product success, but for getting buy-in from people to put money into your idea. That's where they need to get into, because you want to leave the investor thinking, wow, if I don't put money in this right now, I'm really going to miss out. And so how have they been able to communicate the sense of urgency that this is a new idea, they're new to market, or they have a competitive advantage, but more importantly, they have a large enough customer base that will purchase as soon as possible?
This is something I'll be taking notes on for sure. Greg, if I can also recommend, so Naval Ravikant and Baba Nivi, Naval and Nivi, they're co-founders of AngelList. They have a podcast called Spearhead. It's maybe 2-hour long episodes of Spearhead. And it's all about how to become a VC, or how to invest in startups and how to identify startups. I found that to be super, super insightful, just, as somebody who's not a startup investor, just listen to them talk about it and break the game down. I think you might enjoy that. So definitely check that out. Let's go into Asha's question, and then we'll probably wrap it up after that. Go for it, Asha.
I recently started working on financial risk analysis, and this is not my forte by a long shot. So I've been reading up and looking up new resources as to where to go to. A lot of them have been behavioral models and scorecards. I just wanted to know if there is any other resources you could point me to that I'm looking through, yes, for sure. But if you have any other resources that you could point me to, I'd be so glad, especially in financial risk analysis, to be specific, with very huge portfolios.
Have you looked at any like the CFA study materials or anything like that for the CFA exams?
Yes, for sure I have. But any other book you would or tutorial, I would be
I've
very
got
happy.
one.
Anything.
Yeah, I've got one sitting on my shelf. We'll go grab it in a second. But from if anybody has any insight, real quick, definitely help Asha out here. I've got one sitting on my desk. I just got to figure out where it's at, my bookshelf here. Vivian, Russell, Greg, any tips or advice on this one? All right, hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me grab this book real quick.
Could you quickly repeat the question again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I speak so fast sometimes. So I've recently started doing financial risk analysis, and the portfolios I'm dealing with are like really huge customers. Like the customer base is really huge. So they're all urgent all at once. We're dealing with like a customer base of like 27 million. So on top of the financial risk analysis, which is not my forte by a long shot, I'm also dealing with behavioral models. I was just asking if there are any resources on financial risk analysis you could point me to. I mean, I have a few, but any plus would be better.
Yeah, so I'm looking through this. So this is models for quantifying risk. This is I took this when I was studying for actuarial exam 4, and just looking at the chapter titles. I don't know if this will be that related. There's there's chapter 1, review of interest theory, review of probability, Markov chains, stochastic simulation, survival models, life table, contingent payment models. Does any of this sound familiar to what you're working on? Contingent annuity models, funding plans for contingent contracts, things like that. It's heavy on like it's all just like it's probability, linear algebra, simulations, and shit like that. I don't know if this is how in depth you need to go. Like I mean, if you look at this stuff, there's like derivatives in here. So I don't know if this is well suited for your particular use case, but maybe. I think you can, if you're enterprising enough, you can find the PDF of this online for free. So this is 4th edition, and mind you, like I was an actuary over 8 years ago, so there's probably edition 8 by now, but models for quantifying risk.
Thank you. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's the best. That's the best one I got.
Just a quick thing you can look up. I'm just throwing out a term that I'm just aware of. Take it with a grain of salt, but the fog behavioral model. The reason why I say look up that term is I just look that up, and then you can probably find related resources to point you into the right direction to learn about behavior models.
Yeah, the tiny habits framework for behavior modification. Yeah, that's
so the behavioral model I'm looking at will be in regards to creating scorecards as to how you can group a risky customer when it comes to loans and a good customer and middle. That's what I'm looking at for now, but I'll definitely look it up. Thank you.
Quantify like risk profiles type of thing. Describe, quantify risk profiles. Maybe look up those type of words. I feel like this will definitely be overkill for what you're trying to do then. So definitely look it up, see if you can find a PDF, see if it's helpful, but this is probably gonna be way too out of scope for you. Russell, are you looking at the QCRA Monte Carlo analysis for financial risk? Distribution can be key in the analysis. Yeah, sorry, Ash, I don't have much else for you. All right, guys. Russell, go for it. I see you're unmuted there.
Yeah, I'm just going to clarify that. So QCRA is quantitative cost risk analysis. So if you're looking at your model, and I'm talking about not a coded model or an ML model, but the model of the actual entities themselves. And usually for QCRA, you'll be looking at the risks and perhaps schedule material as well, so you understand exactly how the entities are performing, that the risks are associated with. And then Monte Carlo is just running, thousands of simulations to work out the probability of things happening on time, and then playing around with those, and then a distribution of those. So where you've got, I forget all the names of the distributions, but you guys work with data science. There's at least 10 types of distribution curves that can come in there. And I was just typing something else in. PERT analysis is also another thing that comes in, whereby if you've got a minimum, maximum, and mid-range value, you times the mid-range value by 3 or 6 and add it to the minimum and maximum, and then divide by 6 to get a slightly better actual cost impact from it. So all of those are skills that are used in risk analysis itself that maybe you can take forward into your modeling also.
Yeah, where's Carlos? Yeah, get in touch with Carlos Mercado. Tell him Harpreet sent you. He might be able to help you out there. All right, guys. Well, take care. Have a good rest of the weekend. Be sure to tune into the episode I did with James freaking Altucher, the one and only James Altucher. That's huge for me. Next week, I got an episode with John Sfiokla, who wrote The Self-Made Billionaire Effect. That's a book that I literally have read like 3 times, listened to twice on Audible. It is an amazing book. Definitely check that out. I think you'll enjoy that episode. Again, man, thanks for joining everybody. Thanks to everybody that joined us on live streams. Thanks for all your questions. If you are missing out on the chat, then you need to come into the Zoom room next time, guys. Take care. Remember, you've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? Cheers, everyone.